that penmanship? I can't even. Is that mine? Yeah, that's why I gave Donnie credit. Told me. I remember the building on the Appalachian Trail.
I was thinking about that when it come about it.
Nice and chill.
All right, y'all pray with me. We'll get this thing started. Lord, thank you for allowing us to gather here today. We ask that you bless us and watch over us. We ask that you protect our city. We ask that you protect our families. In Jesus' name I pray. Amen. I appreciate everybody coming. Once again, open discussion, talk about land use map, and go through these things. Thomas, I'll hand it over to you. Let you. Okay, very good. From last meeting to this meeting, does anybody have any questions you'd like to talk about?
Do you have any questions, Mr. Mayor? You're the one that came in at the last minute.
Oh, I'm on. Good.
All right, when we left last week, we were talking about, and we expressed that at least the elected officials and any citizens that wanted to participate needed to think about and perhaps start to fill in the map with the various types of uses that we discussed. And so this map right here is one that the mayor and others have been working on with filling in colors. Just to kind of orient, the green are what we would call institutional uses. That's obviously Piedmont, the other schools, hospital, what have you. The legend is up here. The pink is listed as medium intensity.
And Thomas, what we did there was we just took those existing subdivisions that are already built out in these peaks. So just because they're there in that way already.
And so Sweetgrass is somewhere, most of those lots in there are 2/3 of an acre to an acre. Some of them are a little smaller than that. These right here are smaller. Some of those are, I don't know, some of them are small as 1/6 of an acre. Some of that's pretty small. The orange is what is currently high intensity. Those are generally going to be the commercial corridors. What's in blue is most of it is already built with some sort of multifamily housing. A lot of townhomes. There's one set of apartments in here somewhere, and so we'll talk about that. And the yellow is just residential, mainly single family. There's some obviously single family, some of it's farms. You've got, and then in these areas right here, where it's more townhomes, even the stuff that's in residential, a lot of those lots are already obviously platted, and some of them are quite small. So that, in large measure, is what the map will likely look like unless there are substantial thoughts, changes, inputs that suggest that something different ought to happen. Those that are sitting in the back along those sides probably can't see, but right here and right here, you'll see some of the yellow got little black dots on them. Those are parcels that don't have sewer access, which is obviously going to limit what can be built there. There, you've got basically a hole here and a hole here, so you can't get gravity flow. If they were going to put a sewer there, it would have to be a pump station. Those are expensive to maintain, and then, quite frankly, it doesn't appear that there's enough lots in that area to make it worthwhile to serve that area with sewer. So that's kind of a brief walkthrough of the map as it's been drawn out. Any questions or thoughts about that as currently reflective.
Mr. Mayor, you mind if I take a look at you?
Oh, yeah, no, it may be a good time to get everybody up to take a look at it, a little closer look. And really, a lot of this just kind of dictated from the previous maps as far as some of the different commercial aspect. But we went through and just kind of colored some of the multifamily in blue.
It's the same. Which is other than the green part? No, the green is institutional, which would be Piedmont, government, Polk County, Shannon County Schools. The orange is what you're looking for. I'll show you that with some of those good flags.
Trying to see where this property lands in the orange, if it lands in the
It does.
It does.
That's what it has now.
Okay.
And that's what's called high intensity, and we'll rename that some type of commercial.
Okay. High intensity, what is it?
Just residential.
Well, it doesn't include, you still got, it's called a conditional use, conditional.
Oh, yeah.
So you would still have to
Get that in the project.
correct.
So, with the change to commercial, would you still need the approval,
Yes.
special use permit?
Well, that's what we're all gonna talk about. So that's the question you want to ask Thomas, the city attorney there.
Got it. Oh, that's the guy you were talking about.
Could you? I don't have it now, so you gotta make that suggestion. That's what we're here to do, because I'll give you your own pencil color. If you tell me what you want, and we'll see if that's what everybody wants. So, exactly.
Choose its own for 20 years ago. Yeah, it's supposed to go that way.
That one is orange. That's the depot storage unit.
I got one of your vans.
Oh, that's all right, Buzz. I see how you are.
Thank you. I'll take it a souvenir back.
That's it.
The blue's multi-family. Apartments. And that's where
They're changing the word down lonely. Still okay. They go from bad to residential. Either you do high density, keep it high, or make it commercial. That's what's holding the whole development is right here.
This is the street.
This all the development will start in the city. So it's the initial period, first initial step. They never had zoning before. No.
No.
It's frosty this
What's he gonna do, hike up and see part of the Appalachians?
I don't always like.
It's a good day to start, all right.
Well, they stayed in that lodge up there somewhere, Sunday, Monday. So, 5 miles.
So this is just a
They started off.
rough start right now as far as some of the different things. Thomas, as you were going through looking at some of the other cities, what different classes or let's say residential, how many different ones were you thinking about in your proposal?
I think that here you would need probably 3. You're gonna have what I would call low density residential, a medium density residential, and then what I would call multifamily. And one of the things that the council, with input from the citizens that are here, really needs to decide is there's 2 main things when it comes to residential development for a place like Demorest, is what the densities you want in those various classifications, how what the maximum density is. The second thing that you need to decide is, do you want to allow for residential uses in your commercial, in your office institutional areas? Versus bad classes. Well, what I'm saying is that legal zone commercials, that they can have residential uses in those areas. Not necessarily, I don't know the policy discussion there is that generally speaking, it's thought that residential uses cost money. There was a study done by the University of Georgia, I forget the jurisdiction they looked at, but they basically determined that it cost, I don't know, $1.78 for every dollar of tax revenue that a residential property generated. Commercial properties, on the other hand, generated $1 of tax revenue for every 45 cents of services that they consume. And then once you get to industrial, those numbers get even better. The fact of the matter is, Demorest is never going to make money or support itself on property taxes, so I don't know how much of a concern at this point necessarily that is. But you do need to decide whether you want to allow residential uses in those areas, what your intensities are. The other thing you got to decide, if you're going to allow residential in your office and your commercial areas, do you want to do it right, or do you want to do it as a conditional use, where the council gets a say every single time someone wants to put that there. The other types of things that allows are what is often called live-work environments, where you've got areas where people have, and I mentioned this in our last meeting, that Cushton has an area that looks a lot like the smaller lots there, Macmillan, Hazel, the other streets through there. And I mentioned that in that area at Cushton, they basically redone everything for what they call residential office, because they had a lot of the houses there that were converted to restaurants, to law offices, to dentist offices, to chiropractors, and those type of things. Demorest is already seeing some redevelopment in that area, because you're already seeing blue in that area, where people are tearing down the old houses and building triplexes and multifamily there. So those are some of the questions that you all have to answer. From a land use perspective, I mean, the map that is sitting on that easel right there looks to be pretty decent in terms of what it is. I mean, as we've discussed at both meetings, Demorest has constraints because Piedmont owns so much property. And so it's, and they own a lot of area that you, in any other environment, any other town, you'd see a lot of development in that area. The practical matter of most of your development is going to be, ultimately, it's going to be up in this area. So those are the kind of policy decisions that council's got to make with what kind of growth you want to see, where do you want to see it, and how do you want folks that want more intense uses to have to do those. Do you want them to be able to do it upright, where you have a residential zoning classification that you apply to these properties that are closer to the corridor, and they can do up to 5, 6, 7 units per acre,
Subject to sewer.
subject to sewer. And when I say 5, 6, 7 units per acre, which you got here in Habersham Meadows, that's about which, that appears to be about 5 to 6 units per acre.
Because with septic tank, you're gonna be a 1 acre lot.
Effectively.
But you know, you think about some of these lower yellow right there, where you got some of these small lots that are 4/10, 6/10 of an acre. And if they don't have sewer, it can be difficult, because what you have to do is you have to have enough room for today's septic system and tomorrow's septic system. So basically, you gotta have almost a half an acre that's unused, not counting where the house is sitting, because obviously we're not putting the septic tank under the house. So on a 1 acre lot, you're gonna have at least half an acre set aside for the existing and future.
And that's, I mean, at this point, it's really, the elected officials need to discuss kind of what you all perceive, or what you all see in terms of your vision, or how you want this to look.
What's the pros and cons of taking something that's zoned commercial and using it as residential, and us having just that open policy in our land use?
Well, I mean, the main, again, generally speaking, what you're gonna see is that with commercial properties, those are gonna be tax generators, and they're gonna use less services. If you've got more residents in there, especially generally speaking, if you've got multifamily, generally speaking, you're gonna have more police calls, you're gonna have more med calls, those types of things. You just got more people in a closer proximity, and more things happen. And so those types of uses can generate need for more public space. I'm not a policymaker. But in answer to your question, you've got so much property that is is a ways off of the main corridor that will ultimately develop for residential, most likely. It seems to me what you all would want to do is to try to maintain the areas along these corridors for commercial. It's probably not going to be office, but you may have institutional, you may have doctors, lawyers, dentists, real estate professionals, that type of thing. But so I mean that's what I would recommend. But again, that's a policy decision that ultimately y'all are gonna have to make that call based on what you all know about how things are going around here.
Okay. When we're looking at these different colors on the map, and you're suggesting like an R1 and R2, two different zoning classes for residential, what would be 2 examples of those 2?
The R1 is probably, even in this area, is gonna be 1 acre lots or half acre lots.
Okay.
R2 is gonna be anything, probably up to 4 units to the acre, so 1/4 acre lots. And then your multifamily is gonna be anything more intense than that. Maybe as much as 5 units. You've already got single family detached that appears to be denser than that. But I would think generally speaking, for the type of community this is, that's what you would be looking at.
Okay. And then we've kind of covered those residential zoning classes. Which other zoning classes do you think we need multiple of?
I don't think you need, I'm not sure, I think you need 2 commercial, I think you need a general commercial, and then what I would call a neighborhood commercial, something lower intensity type commercial.
And how would that be measured?
Those are gonna be more in terms of the uses that you allow on those, and kind of the general line of demarcation is, auto and customer intensive uses are gonna be your general commercial, and the less automobile, fewer customers, like the difference between a sandwich shop and a grocery store.
Okay.
Difference between a cleaners and a, theater.
So like general would be like a gas station, and then neighborhood would be office.
Office,
Okay.
Restaurants, you probably go on drive-throughs in that area, you have your drive-throughs and your general commercial. I mean, that's gonna be more use driven than it is size driven, I think.
Okay. And then, do you think on the institutional pieces, do you think that we should have different zoning classes set on the institutional pieces? Let's say they go through and they start selling off pieces, then how do we attach them?
Seems to me that what you wanna do in that regard is that you want institutional uses, something that's zoned institutional is restricted to an institutional use. Public or private school, hospital, not by your definitions or your use charts or use list, it's only a hospital. Your medical clinics and things like that are gonna be in a different zoning classification, so that if these big institutional landowners start selling off their parcels, the owners, the buyers have to come to you all and ask for rezoning, and then that way you get to decide kind of what that's gonna look like.
Okay. But if it's sold, they don't come to us.
It's going institutional.
It's just, okay.
They can use it for public or private school, a hospital, or government building. And there's also gonna be, that's your park gonna be, the city's park will be zoned institutional, so. It looks to me like, especially because of the way Demorest has kind of developed, your public and quasi-public uses are gonna be your institutional zoning classifications, and if those public and quasi-public uses are signed off, they need to come to you all and ask for a rezoning to another classification. That's how I see it.
Okay.
But again, that's a recommendation, there's nothing, that's not legal advice, that's kind of practical advice based on.
Thomas, Rick, I'll ask y'all your question.
First of all, again, thank you, council, mayor, and council and Thomas and yourself for the hard work. This is not easy work. Number one. Number two, Demorest is a water town. We all know it. I mean, we're running a $6 million plus budget on $250,000 or less taxes. So when you think about your zoning, I would encourage you to, and I know you already have, to think about what do we want to become in the future, not based on how much tax revenue necessarily, because it's never going to pay for what we got. We couldn't pay for the city office staff with the tax generation that we get. So, and I'm very, very thankful for the public service of the fathers before us that had enough forethought to put enough water pipe in the ground so that we could have the services that we enjoy. They were leaders in that regard, and I know we're all very appreciative. In thinking about what we would like to become, I've obviously, and my wife have talked a lot about agriculture. We've got an old family piece that, together is, about 24 acres. And so I would love to see, it's adjacent to the Skinner property. I don't know what's gonna happen to that property eventually. It's abutted, both those properties, abut a very, at times, volatile creek with runoff that impacts not only that creek, but the Sequoia River and the Chattahoochee River, and ultimately the Lake Lanier.
I'm following you, and right now, Thomas is suggesting 2 residential zoning classes, or 3 residential zoning classes. Let's call it an R1, which has no sewer, and R2, which is quarter-acre lots, and an R3, or multifamily, which now is in blue, that are apartments or townhomes. Let's say we throw in a 4th there, call it RA for agriculture. What would you like to see as far as that density?
I'd say no less than an acre.
Okay.
No, but for that, I would do more than that.
Would you?
I mean, a quarter acre and a half.
So, even the R1, I think the minimum you should look at is, an acre.
Well, R1 is no sewer right now, or that's what we're saying, and you have to have an acre.
Okay, so maybe that should be the minimum across then, as I'm thinking, even like with slope issues, some of those that are less than an acre, you're gonna have a lot of runoff, and it already impacts the creek.
Mhm.
And so it will just continue to do so unless those lots are larger.
Okay.
And particularly,
And
you
with
know, if
that,
it's closer like to the downtown, that's one thing. You know, because I know a lot of those are smaller, but I think as you move out, I think those need to be larger lots.
with that,
Well, at a minimum of an acre.
yeah, but that's, and what else would you like to see in that agriculture class?
Well, I would like, right, of course, I was just going with what you all provided last time. You know, with the discrepancies regarding what can occur there, like it looked like a lot of it was just, I guess, well, farming stuff, not necessarily livestock.
Horses and farming seem to be.
Right, so I mean, I don't, I mean, there's like, you know, there's obviously chickens around town.
I think that when we do our the agriculture or RA classification, that needs to be redone so that it's live. I mean, I don't know, it seems to me that we probably want to exclude a chicken farm, but having chickens is fine. I'm not sure that we want to allow more than a few hogs, because those can wind up, you talk about runoff and things like that, those can create a lot of problems. It looks like Cornelia's RA density is 2 acres per unit. Athens, I think, has 5 units in the acre in that area outside the city center where they've got that greenway outside. So that's kind of what in this area for residential agricultural uses, you're probably looking anywhere from 2 acres to the unit to 5 acres.
Okay.
So in other words, y'all could just, if your kids decided to sell off your property, basically they could put 4 state lots on that, as you take into account roads and all that kind of stuff.
And that, you know, now the question posed is agriculture is a huge industry driver in our county, in our state. Would you want to see the RA classes to be able to sell things, you know, as far as the commercial aspect? Would you like to have an egg stand? You know, would you like to have people coming on buying?
That agritourism.
Yeah.
I mean,
And I saw that in here, like if it's produced on the property, then, and I forget exactly what it was termed, I'm not sure that it was, I don't think it called it a home business, but anyway, if it was produced on the property, that it should be able to be, you know, so if you had, I don't know, sheep or goats and chickens, things like that,
My general thought is that for those areas out there, for what we have, is that the restrictions need to be pretty light with regard to those larger parcels. Just kind of is my thought. And that's up to you all to decide. But I mean, it seems to me that that seems to be what my thought would be. And then if at some point those owners or future owners want to do something more, then they come to the city.
No, this is a great conversation. So right now we have R1, R2, multi-family, we have RA, we have general commercial and neighborhood commercial and institutional. Any others?
Office and industrial are the only other 2 that I can think of.
So you think you'd have another?
You could do,
I mean,
you could allow office in your commercial.
Under the neighborhood? Anybody have any other?
Mo, you got something to say or ask?
Yeah, so I think I'm here to talk about the parcel 0770007-1655 Central Avenue.
Which is right before the cemetery.
Right before,
Left
yeah,
hand
right
side,
across.
that curve, where it's like a 2.5 acre site that's level
It's in
going.
right here.
So I believe currently is zone high intensity, and the project that I'm proposing would require a general commercial for that, which is for a gas station. It's about 2.3 acres. I'm not sure if it has water or sewer on it. I think it has water close by. It doesn't have sewer, but my project, you know, we can get away with septic tank. And I think we have enough room for the half-acre requirement that we have for the septic. The whole project, I think I can probably get it done in about 1.5 acres. We would still have some land left over. So down the road, we might think about doing some rental units, the storage units in the backside. It wouldn't be visible in the front, but that's secondary. You know, right now we have the property under contract, and the only reason we haven't bought it yet because we found out that you guys are going through the whole rezoning and spoke to the sellers. Sellers like, you need to come to the meeting and discuss with the city how they feel about it. And I want to know from you guys how you guys feel about the project. Is that something you guys want to see in the city? If so, then we can move forward with the development. One of the things I believe you mentioned was the taxes. From our experience, gas station brings in one of the highest revenues. You know, from the gas tax, you know, lottery sales and all that stuff is one of the highest tax producer generation. Second thing we're going to have is a restaurant inside the gas station, which from what we have heard, there's not too many food options in the area. So, you know, we're going to have options for food inside, plus we're going to have some rental units next to the gas station, which potentially could be some kind of food down the road.
So like a little service center where you got a convenience store,
Mhm.
two or three other.
2 or 3 other rental bays. It could be any kind of commercial. It could be food. It could be laundry. I don't know. Just whoever comes at that time. And again, in the backside, if we have enough room and if city allows it, we would want to do maybe a boat storage or RV storage, something, you know, people can come in and out. Good thing is we also spoke to DOT and they already saw the site and they're willing to give us an entrance on the main road because the speed limits are only 25 miles an hour. So they don't have any issues as far as the entrance goes. We already have an existing entrance, and they don't mind moving it up and down as needed. So, building, we're looking at, depends on what kind of demand is out there for rental. The gas station itself would be about 3,000 square feet, the convenience store. Then the additional bays will be anywhere from 1,000 to 1,500 square feet. Okay. Again, unless somebody comes ahead of time and says, I want to open a bigger restaurant, then we can modify that to a bigger space. Pump wise, we can fit as many as 6 MPDs, which will be 12 pumps, but I think 4 should be enough for what's out there. We spoke to some of the people at the hospital, and a lot of those nurses over there were very excited about it. They said, you know, there's options that they have right now is so run down, and they said we don't like going there. We want to see something new. We want to feel safe. We want to come to a brand new location. You know, especially the ones that are 24 hours, that they don't want to go out there at nighttime in some of the shady part of town. So our goal would be to clean the area up, make it nice and bright, put some brand new building, nice facade, whatever the requirements are for the city. We typically go with brick and stone, and, you know, metal in the back. So kind of give it that nice, you know, look and feel. So yeah, that's what we're here for. We're trying to see how the city feels, and if that something falls under your expectations, then we can move forward with the property. Because what we don't want to do is go ahead and buy the property, and then realize later on that the city doesn't want it, and then, you know, then we have no use for the land.
Well, it's a great place to start, to have a conversation before you buy.
Sure.
So thank you for coming and making that request and that ask.
Thank you.
Right now, as it's colored prior, it is zoned high intensity that allows for something like that. Now, staff does not have time to go through and make these new changes as far as general commercial, which would allow for gas stations and high traffic, or neighborhood commercial, which allows for less traffic. Does anybody have immediate thought right off the bat on this that you'd like to respond?
Where is this? I don't exactly.
You know where the cemetery is? It's right across the street. Yeah.
It's at the corner, little angle lot. Next to the Demorest apartment, yep, right next to it.
And I think Jerry is talking to the three of y'all too on what y'all were thinking as council with something, these kind of questions and this kind of direction for Thomas and myself as we continue down this path. And, that's what we're needing to hear. If y'all are thinking something is possible or.
It's a commercial port. I don't see an issue with having commercial buildings.
You mentioned 25, that's 441, that's a 35.
DOT told me 25, unless it changes at a certain.
They just dropped it to 25.
Yeah, because they're working on the road.
Yeah, and so we're talking north of Demorest area intersection on up there on the left.
They pretty much bagged all the street sign speeds through here.
Yeah. It'll go back.
It'll go back, right? Okay. I think 35 still should be okay, as long as you meet the, I think
Site.
35 is 300 feet side distance, we should be okay, I think, yeah. Of course, across the street, we got the best neighbors. They don't have any issues.
They just can't purchase.
I'm sorry, a great name for a restaurant across from the cemetery. There's one in Atlanta, 6 feet under.
Yes, I've been there.
Yeah, it is good.
Great place.
Yeah.
So we're not done with all of our land use or is everything included, so you may wait on some of that, what the requirements are for the bill.
So, let's hypothesize, we purchase a property, when do you guys think we would be able to submit our plans or get to the approval stage where we're gonna submit documents?
That's the question.
August, September.
August, September. That should give us enough time to get all the drawing, well, we can't really start the drawing because we will need your feedback on that.
Our mind, Mark's hope is to have an ordinance for council to consider at the June meeting.
Mm-hmm.
And then, if there's not substantial changes, then it would be ready for adoption at the meeting in August. Once the ordinance is adopted, the moratorium would be lifted.
From what it sounds like, even if, I mean, it's gonna go from high intensity to commercial, it's not gonna go to residential.
It doesn't sound like the use is gonna change substantially.
I guess then I would just need the feedback, special use permit, if that would be something, if you guys think you guys don't want a gas station, it would be nice to know now, and that way I don't buy the property, and then you come back in June and say, oh no, we don't want that,
And that's the risk and reward.
Right. But sometimes, there's some cities we go to, they tell us straight up, no gas station, no car wash, no this,
But if you look in that section, where is your next gas station in either?
It's, that
So
little
it's the
chevron,
Chevron
a
on this
hole in the
side.
wall, I mean,
Got
Yeah.
Chevron, and I don't really got anything to get that.
that's it, yeah.
All the way to Clarksville. Well, I guess you got that Citgo over there. Yeah. So,
So it's not like too many coming around.
right.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
I didn't hear
E
you
E85.
ask the question, how many pumps?
So it would be, we're thinking 4, which would be 8 pumps total next
Oh, 8,
back to back, so 4. We could go big, if we put diesel, maybe for the big trucks, we might add another lane for the big trucks, but that's, again, once we submit the drawings to you guys, we'll get your feedback on how you want it.
Much truck traffic on 441.
Sir?
Much truck traffic on 441.
I don't think so, not 18 wheeler.
It's fixing to get more.
No, that's 365.
Let's go this way.
Yeah.
They probably wouldn't come over to this racetrack,
Yeah.
QT.
Thank you for making that.
Thank you for giving us the opportunity to discuss this.
Churches would probably also be institutional.
There you go, yeah. I will say, as far as some of the conversations on some of the other citizens and things, that storage units have been something that's come up several times, and we may get some pushback on that.
That's secondary, we don't, there's just extra land left over. If we have any, it depends on the septic, how much space that takes. But that's secondary. I mean, anything else you guys would like to see there? That's from a city standpoint with the gas station? No.
So like with your gas station, you talking like having a convenience store and then maybe a KFC or an ice cream shop in
No,
the same building? Or?
it would be like a shopping center with the convenience store in the middle, and to the left or right, there would be some rental units. And most likely, we're gonna push for some restaurants, to come in some of those places.
Independence and branding.
We'll approach them.
I heard
It depends on the
Mr. Wilson
demographic, I mean, the population and all that, they'll make a decision based on that.
Alright, very good. Anybody have anything else you'd like to add?
Just for point of record, Jamie is going for his CO this Thursday or Friday on his new restaurant. And, but he won't be able to apply, he won't have his liquor license yet because we can't fill out the next step with the state until he actually has a CO and a fire marshal inspection. So they're all on standby for that. So he'll have some type of slow, soft opening. He's gonna be open doing, the plan is from Wednesday to Saturday night. And then as things pick up, he'll look to go to lunchtime and do, Wednesday through Saturday.
Our family's excited about having that caliber of chef in
Absolutely.
downtown Demorest.
And y'all are gonna be blown away when you see what that man has done to that building. He has spent some money. And, so,
That it looks great, it's gonna be great, but the man can absolutely cook,
Yes.
so.
yes.
The other piece of all this that we haven't discussed at all is development regulations. EMI, 2 years ago, put together a set of regulations. They had done a set for Baldwin, and they basically, and I think they presumed that Baldwin was, their interest and needs were similar to what we would have. And so the document they gave us was substantially similar to what they had done for Baldwin. That's on the system somewhere, and that needs to be a part of all this as well. So that's another thing y'all need to take a look at, in the next couple months, and we need to put that in place as well.
I do have a question. Do we know where the water is around there?
I got a note to check with him. Call me tomorrow. And I'll get with
On
our.
the way here, I saw the new underground piping being laid. Is that continuing on this way? Or?
I can't answer that question at this point, but I can confirm all that tomorrow.
Okay.
The hospital has water.
You have to have it.
And sewer.
But isn't there sewer where he's talking about?
That's what I'm afraid to answer off the top of my head,
There's probably water.
but we can get that answer tomorrow.
That looks like water line, 2 inch. 4 inch.
The only thing that I see immediately that's in our current land use, but is not in the proposed land use, is the sensitive land. That was in our current, it is in our current.
What is that classified? When you say sensitive, what does that mean?
Well, for me, I'm gonna put my PhD biology hat on just for a moment. I talk about sensitive lands, I'm talking about your water areas, I'm talking about your wetland areas,
Yeah.
I'm talking about that. So you've got Hazel Creek was a significant corridor that comes by the fire station and flows eventually into the Squee River. You've got Cross Creek, which comes by, through and by our property. You've got there are a number of small streams that feed into Cross Creek as well. So when you start talking about, they call it Demorest Springs Park for a reason. There's a lot, we live in a bowl.
Yeah.
And we're the lowest elevation in the county. And so when we think about, what are we doing around the wetlands associated with your federally protected wetlands associated with Piedmont University, for example? Or what are we doing with Hazel Creek that flows through that and ultimately is gonna feed down below? So it was just a thought, do we need to, is there a, Thomas, and you can answer this, is there a subsidiary demarcation for a particular piece of property? Let's say it's R1 SL or something like that, so that you understand that that's a sensitive land piece of property, and it might invoke some other type of regulations or something along those lines as a subsidiary of a particular classification. And I don't know that.
What I would suggest we do is that if we can identify what those parcels are, is that's a overlay, a sensitive land overlay, that we could probably take sensitive land, that was called.
Yes.
Sensitive land from the current land use and just turn that into an overlay. And I parcels need to be. And then there'd be a provision that basically said, to the extent that the underlying zoning and the overlay conflict, you gotta determine which one controls. In this case, it would be the sensitive land overlay would control. But so in other words, if the general zoning would allow, say, 10,000 square feet of commercial, but because it's sensitive, it's limited to 5,000, then the 5,000 will control. So the way that would work. That's just an example. I'm not saying that's necessarily really.
And the reason I think I mentioned the last time, there's a USDA number associated with our family's property. It qualifies for some governmental assistance on fencing, for example, because it does border a creek. They consider it a sensitive land. They don't want to see cattle in creek anymore, like it used to be, for example. And so, even from the state and then the federal level, they're taking a look at that. But how can we preserve our waterways? And so when I'm thinking about sensitive land, those are the types of things that we're talking about. It's a precious resource, and we're not going to get any more. So.
Maybe one way, we'd have to figure out how to find that overlay. I don't know if we can figure that out. But yeah, I would suggest, generally speaking, we would do that. I think we do that.
I think over the next week, we're gonna pop in and work on this map to get it where it needs to be and invite the community to come in and work at it, City Hall, and start moving forward in that direction.
Just a rectangle. I'm looking at a square there in the middle. Is that the original drawings? The whole colored square there. Yeah, there you go. Is that the original, and all the rest of it sort of being annexed in, or what? I'm talking about, we had a map here last.
He's asking what it looks like. Generally, the square, that was the original boundaries of Demorest, and then you got these appendages.
We have that on there.
Yeah, we have those two old plats that date back that we had in here, one of them last week. So we'll look at that and see.
Most of the cities in Georgia, you can say the circle, because they're always defined as
Yeah.
half mile or a mile from the
circle's on that.
City Hall,
Where is
Railroad Depot, or whatever.
I don't know what the circle meant on that line, but I don't think it was a city limits.
This red area, this red thing, this will transfer over as well. That's the historic district, so that will. So you can get an HPC.
And I would just like to reiterate too, like when we're looking at the different zonings and properties, is looking at slope too, or having that as a condition of, I guess maybe even the minimum lot sizes. Because if you've got a steeper lot, you're gonna have more runoff. That's gonna impact someone below.
That was in our development standards.
That's gonna be in the development.
So that's something that, looking, see what we have already, because that exists already.
That will need to be, we need to make sure we carry that forward, because that is, especially for some of those areas, that's a big deal. What's the highest elevation in Demorest? Does the Mountain Protection Act apply this far?
No.
It does not. Yeah, we're not high enough.
Like our subdivision is on one side of a holler, and there's another group, like there's another couple of houses on the other side of the holler. And that creek comes right down between them and empties into a man-made pond. And so, I think what Rick's saying is that all of that water, could generally, I guess, be making its way down into that creek. It's a small creek.
The other way-
It's not as big as the creek.
No, but that one, and I'm aware of two more that run into that creek, just on up the holler.
Yeah.
That, those are, that's one of the reasons that I'm kind of worried about the 300 that are going into the county that's just across the city limits. That, it's gonna affect a lot. And, while we as citizens may be able to go and voice something, y'all are well aware that elected officials carry a lot of weight in those types of discussions as well. So do city managers. And so when we get to that point, I would hope that we all kind of go and say, hey, what are we doing and how is it gonna affect us in general?
Which is
Because,
why we need public input.
right,
You know, we need you to reach out and let us know what you're thinking so that we can bring that, that knowledge and those concerns to light. You know, you can talk about it around the kitchen table all you want, but that doesn't let me know how you're feeling about it. You know? And so, that's what these things are for. And I appreciate y'all coming out.
Which has been great. Do put on your calendars that, first Tuesday in June, there'll be we are having a meeting for first Tuesday in June. So that'll be,
I don't know why we wouldn't, just sitting here, so.
that'll hopefully will be first read of a new zoning ordinance.
Mr. City Manager, would it be, and Mayor, and Council, would it be possible that if we are going to have a first reading on that we can have access to copies of the draft?
Yeah.
ahead of
Oh,
time?
absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, as soon as we get that, because that's something we would discuss in the meeting on that June meeting, absolutely. And so then we would vote in July or August.
How do y'all see the zoning and the development standards coming together in tandem? Do y'all plan to do them at the same time or do it as step one, step two?
The development standards, I don't know that they'll be ready to have those considered at that meeting. Those don't require the same notice and everything. But before we lift the moratorium, those will need to be in place, I would think.
And guys, what here we're talking about the development standards, that's a section that a developer wants to come in. It says in there, here's how you build your streets, here's how wide your sidewalks are, here's how you water line, sewer line goes in, all those kind of things, so that it's not a question when a developer opens our book and says, this is what I want to do. And we want those standards to be here, not here. Because they've been here in some past developments or brown governments, because the developer will come in and try to do it as cheap as he can if you'll let him. But at the same time, they want to do it right if we have those high standards for that. And again, just like, you know, on any of these things, we put them in there, they're in there for a purpose, and they'll be enforced, and they'll have to follow the rules. And that's where we'll have these same kind of meeting on development standards. So it's very important.
And that will be done by August.
That part may or may not be on development standards.
I hope we're prepared to.
Okay.
Because then we wouldn't be able to submit anything without that.
Correct. Well, we have some now that are in
Okay,
place.
got it.
You have development standards there, but we're looking to improve all
Make
this,
it
so
better,
there's
yeah, of course.
no question.
Are you one of the print media?
Yes.
If you all have room, will you publish this map? I know I saw you.
Yeah,
put a
if you
picture
could
of
send
y'all.
like a scanned copy of it too, that might be better than just like a picture of the.
That's just
Oh.
hand drawn
Oh.
and colored by staff.
Yeah.
So, with the
I can take a
racers,
picture too.
with the racers.
Yeah, I can take a picture too.
Yes.
I don't know if it's quite ready. I just think people want to. That's all.
It's just proposal. Okay.
Make sure it's if you put it in there, make sure it's
Proposed.
captioned proposed.
Mhm.
Yeah. Read the first draft. That's a good idea too, yeah. Once we have it in better shape, we'll put it in there when we run the notice of the June meeting. Okay.
What's the date of that?
First Tuesday.
First Tuesday in June.
So
I think it's the fourth.
4th June. Same time.
Further discussion?
Three other things that you all need to elect to think about. Accessory uses on residential properties, minimum square footages, and short-term rentals. The short-term rentals, that's becoming a bigger and bigger deal. And there's two ways to regulate short-term rentals. One is by licensing. That's the way a lot of jurisdictions, implemented it in your zoning, where they're either prohibited or allowed in certain zoning classifications or by conditional use permit, things like that. That's how Athens does it through zoning. I know that because I'm litigating an
What about where the builder, the whole subdivision is a rental?
That's something y'all need to think about and we need to address. There are ways to do that if we address it now.
And what I'm saying is they'll come in and build 150 homes. And that's owned by a business and they rent the house out for $2,000, $3,000 and it's total turnkey. They cut the grass, they maintain the house and everything. So your house value can stay at a higher value subject to how they take care of the property. Because the homeowner, he's not the homeowner, he's just the tenant. He's not cutting the grass, he's not doing anything, but they'll have a very tough HOA on their own tenants in there. Some people like that, some people don't like to have, because that whole 150 homes is all rental.
And the policy, generally speaking, the policy issues there are if generally you want, the thought is that people, owner occupied homes, people who own their homes and own their property are gonna be more invested in the community and are gonna take better care of their property and you give an opportunity for people to buy and stay in the community. If large builders come in and buy up the big tracts and build and develop these build-to-rent communities, think about an apartment complex with a single family detached. They build the whole neighborhood and all they're doing is renting those out. It's really hard to regulate that once it's already come. If we're doing a new ordinance, the best way I've seen so far to regulate that is the way Snellville has done it, where they've got basically, the answer, it goes back to the question you asked earlier about number of zoning classifications. They basically have created a mirror of their residential zoning classifications that they call R1R, so R1 no. Well, that's not Snellville's classification, example we have here. So that's one way to, if you are interested in trying to regulate that would be the way to do it in this community, where that's a separate zoning classification, so they have to come in and they have to then answer the kind of questions Mark's talking about, what kind of HOA, what kind of maintenance, what kind of enforcement are you willing to agree to as a condition of zoning, those types of things.
We can't prohibit that.
Hard to prohibit because it's hard to enforce. Generally speaking, the opportunity to rent your property is a stick in your property rights bundle. And so it's easier to regulate it is than it is to completely ban it. In a number of communities that are not build to rent, they will agree to a homeowners association with covenants. And the covenants will contain a restriction on the number of rental units, and then it's up to the HOA to enforce. So in other words, the covenants would say no more than 10% of the units at any one time can be rented. You've got a 100-unit subdivision, no more than 10 can be renter occupied at any one time. But it's up to the board of directors of that homeowners association to enforce that. Whereas if you do it now so that you can impose conditions, then it becomes easier to manage. Okay. Less likely to be challenged. It's an open question. We may be able to ban it. No one's tried yet. And then had it challenged and then had an appellate decision either upheld or rejected. Those regulations.
All right, anything else?
So is this the part two where you discuss like the minimum square footage? There's like, I saw just an example here where it said 300 square feet per adult.
Yeah.
That seems very tiny to me.
Right now it's 200. What Demorest has now is 200. Or 250, it's very small, very small.
Could that not be increased? I mean, because once, how do you go, okay, I mean, you can't have children because your house is only X number. It seems to me like it would be easier to have a larger square footage minimum.
The policy discussion with that right now is tiny homes and affordable and workforce housing. There are some areas where because of property values, it is really difficult to in order to make for affordable housing that is not an apartment complex and is detached, is to allow smaller square footages. And there's a whole theory about how that works. And you see, now granted, oftentimes rather than all children, but you see minimum square footages for some bigger developments and 900 and 1,000 square feet for some house. That seems awfully small. But yeah, that's a discussion that needs to be had as well. As far as whether or not you want to set minimum square footages for single family residential homes.
And I do think now is the time to start kind of grouping together some of those proposals that's in the book that you're holding and start attaching on some of these that we have here. Because there's a lot more in that book than we're gonna have the classifications. So that's something that our staff's gonna be working on in the next couple of weeks.
I have a question. Is there any need for student housing because of the university down the road? Have they approached anything?
They seem to have more sufficient housing more than.
Really?
Yeah.
My impression, but I don't know.
Where? Is it part of the campus?
If you're an athlete, you're required to live in a dorm. You cannot live off campus, and the preponderance of the students are athletes.
Okay, so they have enough.
But they have the student housing apartment on Demorest Mount Airy Highway right there on the left-hand side going out.
And they just built a big new dorm. On the backside of campus.
Yeah,
On
so-
the backside of Georgia Street, they just built a big.
Yeah.
dorm back there.
How many students are there?
It's been a hot minute since I've been there, don't know.
1,200 plus or minus.
They all stay here or?
It's a
In and
mixture
out.
of
It's a
commute and like Rick said, with the dorms and the athletes and that kind of stuff, because there was a lot of apartments they did over there, so
Yeah.
I'm sure it's just like anybody else. There's always a need for something like that. But we can help you with,
Because we're working with City of Griffin right now with UGA. They're partnering up with us to put dorms for their campus in Griffin downtown. And the way they're doing it, they're giving us funding, like a grant to build it for them.
From the regions, more regions, or city Griffin?
No, UGA at University of Georgia. Yeah, there's a need for that over there, so I'm not sure if they're working on something for that over here. 1,200 students, I think they should have enough.
They got a bunch of dorms and they've got a couple of apartment complexes that appear to be, while they may not be restricted to students.
That will fall under that zoning institution. As a student home.
The apartment complexes they're not university owned, they're privately owned, so they would be, the one I'm thinking of is not even in the city, it's right about here, so that one's in the county.
No, but if they were to add more dorms, a student living with that fall.
that would fall under the institutions,
Yeah.
with the multifamily.
We do need to start working on putting in some classes on paper for the discussion. And then I'll start on that.
Well, thank you guys for giving us the opportunity. Look forward to work with you in June.
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
Second, all those in favor?